What if the tiny human in your arms has already decided you are their entire universe, and they've been trying to tell you this whole time in a language most adults never learn to read? Scientists who study infant attachment have discovered something remarkable. Babies, even newborns who can barely lift their heads, display specific, rare behaviors that appear almost exclusively when they feel a deep, profound bond with one person. Not just comfort, not just familiarity, something researchers are now calling pre-verbal love. These aren't the obvious signs, not smiling, not reaching. Every baby does those things. We're talking about 10 behaviors so subtle, so specific, that most parents miss them entirely, even when it's happening right in front of their eyes, multiple times a day. And here's what makes this even more extraordinary. Each one of these behaviors involves a precise neurological process, a firing of brand new neural pathways in that tiny developing brain that only activates in the presence of someone the baby has chosen. And babies, it turns out, are far more selective than we ever imagined. The first time researchers documented these patterns in a controlled study, they were genuinely surprised. They had expected babies to show bonding behaviors toward anyone who fed them, held them, kept them warm, but that's not what the data showed. The data showed something far more intentional, far more chosen. So before we go any further, think about the baby in your life, your child, your grandchild, a niece or nephew, a little one you care for. As you watch this, you may start to recognize moments you thought were random, moments you dismissed as coincidence. And you'll realize those moments were never random at all. We're going to walk through 10 of these rare behaviors together, and by the time we reach the end, the way you see your baby and the way you understand what they're silently telling you will never be the same. Let's begin with something that happens in the very first weeks of life. Something so quiet, so brief, that most parents never notice it. Scientists call it social referencing in the premobile stage, but what it looks like in real life is this. A baby lying in your arms suddenly becomes very still, not sleepy still, alert still. Their eyes find your face, and for just a moment, maybe 2 or 3 seconds, they stop everything. No movement, no sound, just looking, studying, as if they are reading something written on your face that only they can see. What's happening inside that brain in those 2 or 3 seconds is extraordinary. The limbic system, the emotional center, is actively comparing this face to its internal map of safety. And when the match is strong enough, when the bond is deep enough, the baby doesn't just relax. They do something specific with their body, something we'll get into in just a moment. But first, here's what makes this even more fascinating. Researchers found that this stillness behavior, this intense, quiet staring, almost never happens with strangers. It happens with one person, sometimes 2, the people the baby has chosen, the people the baby's nervous system has already categorized at a biological level as home. Think about that. A baby just weeks old who cannot walk, cannot talk, cannot even hold their own head up, has already built an internal list of the people who mean everything to them, and they check that list every single time you walk into the room. Now, that stillness we just described, it always leads somewhere, and where it leads is the first of our 10 rare behaviors, one that researchers had to slow down video footage to even catch properly, because it lasts less than a second, but it contains more emotional information than most adults communicate in an entire conversation. We're going to show you exactly what it looks like, what it means, and why your baby has almost certainly done this to you already without you realizing it. But we also need to talk about something first, something that sets the stage for all 10 of these behaviors. Because to understand why babies show love in these hidden ways, you first have to understand something about how the infant brain is built, how it's designed, from the very first breath, to seek out one thing above all else: connection. Not just any connection, specific connection, chosen connection. The infant brain arrives in this world running one primary program, a neurological search engine. Essentially, constantly scanning the environment for signals of deep safety. And when it finds those signals in a voice, a smell, a heartbeat, a pair of eyes, it does something no algorithm could replicate. It attaches completely, irreversibly, with a depth of commitment that most of us spend our entire adult lives trying to rediscover. And the 10 behaviors we're about to explore, they are that attachment made visible. They are love, real, chosen, deliberate love expressed through the only language a baby has, a language made of stillness, and movement, and breath, and tiny gestures that mean everything. If you know how to look, you're about to learn how to look. That tiny notepad inside a baby's mind, that internal list, we left off there, and if you've been thinking about it, wondering who made it onto your baby's list, you're already thinking the way researchers had to learn to think. Slowly, carefully, from the baby's perspective, not the adults. Because here's what took scientists years to understand. A baby doesn't choose based on logic. They don't choose based on time spent together, or genetics, or even how often you feed them. They choose based on something far more ancient, far more precise, a felt sense of resonance, a biological recognition that this particular person makes my nervous system feel safe in a way nothing else does. And when that recognition is strong enough, when that bond crosses a certain invisible threshold, the baby begins to show it, not loudly, not obviously, but in 10 very specific ways that, once you know what to look for, you will never be able to unsee. We teased the first behavior at the end of our last segment, the stillness, the alert, wide-eyed pause, but we didn't tell you what happens next, what the baby does with their body in the 3 seconds after that stillness, because that's where behavior number 1 truly lives. Here it is. After that moment of intense, locked stillness, after the baby's limbic system has finished its silent comparison and confirmed, yes, this is the one, the baby exhales. Not a big, dramatic exhale, a tiny, barely perceptible release of breath, and with it, the shoulders, those impossibly small, rounded shoulders, drop, just slightly. And the hands, which were held in loose fists, open, fingers spread, just for a moment. Researchers call this the tension release reflex in bonded recognition. But what it actually is, in plain human terms, is this. The baby's body is saying, I was holding myself ready, just in case, and now I don't have to anymore. Because you're here, think about that. A baby, weeks old, was carrying a subtle physical tension, a biological preparedness, until they saw your face. And your face alone made them let it go. That spreading of the fingers, that tiny exhale, that is not random biology. That is your baby telling you, with the only vocabulary they have, you are the reason I feel safe in this world. Most parents, when shown slow-motion video of this happening with their own child, become emotional. Not because it's sad, because it's so overwhelmingly clear, it was always there, they just didn't have the language for it. Now you do. And once you have it, watch the hands, watch the fingers. The next time you pick up your baby, or walk into the room where they're lying, watch what happens to those small, curled fingers. Watch for the opening. It takes less than a second, but it means everything now. Behavior number 2 is one that pediatric neurologists find particularly fascinating, because it reveals something about infant brain development that contradicts what most people assume. Most people assume that babies are reactive, that they respond to what's already happening. But behavior number 2 shows us that babies, with the people they love deeply, become predictive. Here's what that looks like. You walk toward your baby, not touching yet, not speaking yet, just moving in their direction. And before you've said a word, before you've made any sound at all, the baby's body begins to prepare. The arms lift slightly, the chest rises, the legs may kick once or twice, not in distress, but in something that can only be described as anticipatory excitement. The baby's brain has already calculated what's about to happen. It has learned your approach, your particular pattern of movement, the specific rhythm of your footsteps, the way the light changes when your shadow crosses a certain point, and it has learned to expect what comes after the holding, the warmth, the voice, and it begins to feel it before it even arrives. This is called predictive attachment response, and it only develops toward people with whom the baby has formed what researchers classify as a primary bond, not a friendly bond, not a comfortable bond. A primary bond, a chosen bond. If you want to test this quietly, gently, try it tomorrow. Walk slowly toward your baby from across the room. Before you speak, before you smile, just walk naturally and watch. If those arms begin to lift before you arrive, if those legs begin to kick with that particular kind of happy readiness, you are watching your baby's brain say, I know what love feels like. And it feels like you coming closer.
Because the 5 behaviors still ahead of us, numbers 6 through 10, they don't just describe how a baby seeks safety from the person they love. They describe something that researchers were not expecting to find at all. Something that changes the entire picture of what infant love actually is. What they found is this. Babies don't just love their chosen person the way we might love a warm blanket or a familiar smell. They are fascinated by them. Genuinely, neurologically, completely fascinated. And that fascination, that wonder, expresses itself in ways that are, when you finally see them clearly, nothing short of breathtaking. Let's continue. Behavior number 6. This one happens during what researchers call the social smile window. But it's not about smiling. It's about what happens just before the smile. In the half-second before a baby's face breaks into that full, open, luminous smile, there is a micro-expression, a flicker, so fast that cameras originally missed it. What the flicker looks like is this. The eyes widen first, just slightly, and for the briefest moment, the baby's expression is not joy. It is something closer to awe, recognition awe. The specific, overwhelming feeling of seeing something you love so much that your face doesn't know immediately how to hold it. Adults feel this too. In the first half-second of seeing someone we love unexpectedly, a partner returning from a long trip, a friend appearing in a crowd, before the smile comes, there is something else, something raw and unperformed. In adults, social conditioning closes that window almost instantly. We smile before anyone sees the awe. But babies haven't learned to close that window yet. And so you can see it, the full, unfiltered, unperformed moment of you. It's you. Something in my entire body just responded to you existing in my field of vision. That micro-expression of awe, that flicker before the smile, researchers found it appeared almost exclusively in response to the primary bonded caregiver. Not all familiar faces, not all loved faces, the chosen one, every single time. Like a reflex, the heart runs before the face catches up. Watch for it. It happens in the first fraction of a second. Be ready. Behavior number 7 brings us to something researchers initially classified as a cognitive behavior, but which turned out to be, at its root, deeply emotional. It involves the baby's voice, not crying, not babbling in the general sense, something more specific. When babies are in the presence of the person they love most, their vocalizations change in a way that is measurable and consistent. The pitch rises slightly. The sounds become more varied, more experimental, more playful. There are pauses, deliberate pauses, where the baby makes a sound and then waits, not randomly. They wait for you. Linguists and attachment researchers studying this behavior together came to a startling conclusion. Babies with their primary bonded person are attempting proto-conversation. They are not just making sounds, they are initiating an exchange. They are saying something in the only phonetic vocabulary they have, and then holding space for your response. This behavior, called contingent vocalization in research literature, appears as early as 6 weeks of age. 6 weeks! A baby 6 weeks old who has never read a book or seen a conversation modeled in any conscious way understands that communication is a two-way event, and they practice it exclusively, consistently with the person they have chosen to love. Think about what that means. Before they have words, they are already trying to talk to you, specifically to you, because you are the one they want to be in conversation with for the rest of their life. Behavior number 8 is one that tends to stop researchers mid-sentence when they try to describe it, because it requires them to use a word they don't often use in scientific literature. The word is grief. Here's the behavior. When the primary bonded caregiver is absent for an extended period, not just briefly out of the room, but genuinely absent, babies display a very specific physiological response. Their cortisol levels rise, their sleep disrupts, their appetite may change, and most remarkably, their social responsiveness to other people decreases. Not because they're ill, because they are experiencing